good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and good morning. I got to remember good morning. So, Matt, should I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night? Would that be better, or is that too much of a mouthful?
I mean, it's a lot of words, so you just keep doing you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
There you go. And we are just so glad you have joined us today. As always, if you have not done so already, please take a minute, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this episode. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you give us a comment down below, as we will be reading and responding to comments, questions, and concerns throughout this episode. You can also email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com.
Woo.
Whew.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. But hey, it's a good reminder. And if you haven't done so, take a minute also. Send this episode to somebody. Send somebody who might need to hear it, who would benefit from our discussion, who is looking to navigate how to live as a Christ follower in a world that increasingly is not. Now, last week we had an amazing guest, Dr. Mike Lacona, and I'd love to hear more from you guys on what you thought of that, conversation. Email podcast@dfchurch.com as well. But, Matt.
Yeah.
Let's jump in. Well, okay, so here's my question. Normally we start with the news.
Okay.
Then we do our Bible reading time. Then we get to our main topic.
Yeah.
Now, the news and our main topic are kind of the same today.
Yeah.
So do we want to start with our Bible reading segment and then just jump into everything else?
No, I think we're going to bring our Bible reading segment also into our news and main topic today.
Oh, snap. 3 for the price of 1.
Wow.
Now,
What was that?
I'm getting over being sick, so
Okay.
I might stop and cough a few times. I apologize if you are listening. If you watch and you just see me keel over because I'm just coughing to death, you'll know why.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, you are welcome. Well, let's then, I guess, just jump into all of it.
Okay.
The election happened. We've been talking about it.
Wait, what?
I know. And shockingly, we got results that night. I mean, it was late, but
Yeah.
I was thinking it was going to be like they were Pennsylvania saying it might take us 2 weeks to count everything. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Counting is hard, man.
apparently. Now, here's the question. Even though counting is apparently hard. As of the time of recording this, I have not seen it called for Nevada or Arizona.
Yep. It's kind of weird.
Now, you might be watching this. Maybe they finally figured it out. But my question is, why is it taking so long for these two states? And is it just because they're swing states? Because earlier ones, they called it.
Right.
There was one state, it had 0% of polling in.
Yeah.
And they called it for Trump.
Yeah. And then California
Yeah.
was called in both the AP and another one I was looking at with 0% in.
Right.
And
I guess it's because they just know it's going to swing that. There's no way that it's going to go the other way. But what if it did? Do they
You got to backtrack because like the AP calling something is not an official result. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when is it like?
It's official January 6th.
Well, I mean, I guess it's official
when
December,
the vote's certified, right?
Whatever, when the electors from each state go in.
Right.
For the electoral college and they vote.
Well, we vote in November. We as the public.
Yes.
Then our representatives, the delegates,
Yeah.
they vote in December.
Yes.
Based on how we voted in November, based upon state law.
Yes.
And then January 6th, the votes from the delegates of the electoral college is confirmed.
Right.
And then January 20th, we have the inauguration.
Is that how the timing works?
Yeah. Why?
I'm assuming it's because these rules were created when travel took a lot longer.
That checks out. All
Right.
All
So it's November. It's going to take them a month to all get the results back to Washington. And then.
So you're saying we haven't always had like the internet the way we have it and instant communication?
Right. I'm guessing in like 1810 1810 or 1808 or whenever the elections were. I don't know the dates. They're all even years, right? Every 4 years.
Every 4 for president. Yeah.
Right. So whenever they probably voted, they voted in November, and the state figured out their answer, gave that answer to the delegates, who then started the journey to Washington,
Yeah.
who then voted. And then they probably gave that extra month to let them come back and let them know who won. Right? Because if in Colorado, we're like, all right, we voted for this guy, send off our delegate.
Right.
We're not going to hear how every other state voted. Right. So then they all go, the electoral college meets, they elect the president, and then those people all probably come back with the messages of who won.
Man, what a time to be alive, guys.
Now we're like, what? I didn't get it the next day? Man.
No, day of.
Right.
We're mad we didn't get it day of. Yeah.
So that's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
Now, I know if you're watching, you're listening, you might be thinking, are we really talking politics again? And I have such good news for you. This is good news, at least for me. I find this to be good news. Maybe you will as well. We don't have to really talk about politics again for 4 more years, right? Unless something crazy happens, like Trump decides to turn us into some other kind of system of government and we start a civil war, or the Democrats decide to not allow Trump and they still elect Kamala and we have 2 presidents and we have a civil war. Okay, then we'll talk politics. But assuming everything just goes the way it should go, and figuring that we're going to have a peaceful transfer of power, which I think we will. That's what Kamala talked about yesterday in her speech about the stars. You can only see the stars when it's darkest outside. It was, if you didn't watch it, good. You better off than I am, because I feel dumber having seen it. Matt.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
As we wrap up our political talk with a now what type of a thing, I want to ask you this. We had mentioned a couple weeks ago, as a nonprofit organization, we are not legally allowed to specifically endorse or anti-endorse specific candidates.
Yeah.
As individuals, now that it's over, can we say, oh, I'm glad this person lost, or wow, that person was terrible? Because we can't endorse or unendorse because it's over.
Right.
We're just talking retrospectively.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fine line.
Well, if there's anything we're saying, it's on our personal. Maybe if I give you this disclaimer, what we're talking about will be our personal beliefs and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs of Discovery Fellowship Church as an entity. I don't know if this is legally binding, but hey, we're speaking on our own personal views, opinions, and thoughts, not as the nonprofit organization Discovery Fellowship Church. So take that with what it is.
Yeah.
So how do you feel now that the election's over, Matt? Let's just start there.
Probably the same as I did the day before the election.
Don't you think everything has changed?
Yeah. Here's what's really funny.
Okay.
Nothing has changed. We all woke up this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you didn't get the memo from the title of this podcast or Nathan's last 8 minutes of whatever he was talking about, we are talking about what now, right? The election's over.
Yep.
Results are in. We know who our next president and vice president are going to be.
Yes.
What now is the question? And I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of frustrations with people, more so than politics right now. And so yeah, you say, how do I feel? Yeah, the exact same. Nothing has changed because the results of the election changed nothing today.
Right.
Right. And so
but going forward, I guess,
right, yeah.
So let me ask you it this way, I guess. Or let me maybe make a statement and then we can
make a statement
from there. So I saw a lot of people on TikTok and other social media places basically melting down, right? And it made me think, this is what happens when your entire trust and faith is in a government instead of Jesus, right? Because what they said is, and I don't even understand. They're like, I guess now I'm going to be shot in the street
Right.
because Trump has won. And I'm like, where are you getting that? That's insane. Like people crying and saying this is the end. Okay. And it made me think, yeah, you've put your faith in a person and that will always let you down. But I think we need to be really careful on the flip side of it. Just because now, so I'll say, I voted for Trump. Am I allowed to say that? I'll say that. And I'm glad he won because I think obviously I aligned with his vision for the future over Kamala's on a policy standpoint. And so I think there are a lot of people though who are like, because he won, everything's going to be awesome and great. And the whole world's going to be rainbows and everything's going to get back to how it was. Mm-hmm. And that is just as dangerous because you're still putting all of your faith in a person to be your savior, right? We have made the president the functional savior of our country on both sides of it. And so it is good to be excited if your person won. It's fine to be disappointed if your person lost.
Yeah.
Either way, Jesus is still king.
Yeah.
Either way, God's will is still going to be done. And neither of those people will save us.
Yes. Let's call out for a second some idolatry.
Okay. I love it.
Both sides of the aisle.
Ooh.
Massive idolatry. I've seen people who I've gone to church with, who are brothers and sisters in Christ, who made posts like today, Wednesday morning after the results were in, is the best day ever. Mm-hmm. Hashtag grateful, thankful, blessed.
Okay.
No other reasoning for that other than they're happy with the results of the election.
Right.
They have never before posted today is the best day ever. Not the day that their child was baptized, not the day that they placed their faith in Jesus, not the day that they got married, not the day that someone was elected president is the best day ever. This is idolatry.
That
right?
is
And we have to call
idolatry.
that out. And we have it on the other side too, where you see it from today's the worst day ever, or now the world is over, or now I don't know how I'm going to live,
right.
or CSU had a like you didn't have to go to class on Wednesday. They had places set up on campus for people who were dealing with anxiety because of the results of this for you to go. And I heard they had like coloring pages and stuff like this for, okay, these are adults and college students are adults.
Don't understand. Now, I want to be careful. I want to not minimize if somebody is really feeling upset, feel your feelings. But to have a need for that as an adult to say, I can't handle this because I didn't get what I wanted.
Right. This is what happens when our faith is in anything other than Jesus.
Right.
It will always fall short. It will always leave you empty. It will always fail you. Every single time when you place your faith in anything other than Jesus, it ultimately will lead to emptiness, failure, loss, hurt, sorrow. Right? People are going crazy right now because they have no hope in anything other than their political party or their political candidate. They have no peace in anything other than their political party and their political candidate. And look where that leaves you. In fact, about every 4 years, it leaves half of the population pretty disappointed, pretty upset, pretty hurt, whatever you might want to call it. And so it's frustrating as a Christ follower, as a pastor who has spent the last 20 plus years trying to help people place their faith solely in Jesus and let that be the guiding factor of everything, to see this be the response over one election.
Right.
On both sides, both on the positive and the negative. Like, it is so frustrating to see. Because, like, dude, where are your priorities?
Right.
What would happen? And I'm getting on soapboxes, and that's fine. That's why I have a podcast that I get to be on, so I can do this, right?
That's right.
What would happen if we actually cared as much about Jesus as we do about the political nature of America? Like, what would happen if we talked about Jesus as much as we talk about our candidate? What would happen if we loved the way that Jesus loved, the way that we hate the other party?
Right.
Right? Like, this world would radically be different.
Right.
You would be happier. You would be filled with this joy and this peace and this hope because Jesus is on the throne of your life, not Trump or Harris or Republican or Democrat or red or blue or whatever you want to say it. Now, I know Christians, none of us are going to say, yes, I have placed America in a spot that only Jesus deserves. We're not going to say that. You don't have to, though. Right? It's that whole tell me you're idolizing America without telling me you're idolizing America.
Right.
You've already done it. I've seen it.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah. So that's a good segue. I want us to have you watch kind of live react maybe to a video I saw on TikTok that kind of hits a lot of these same points. And I thought it would be a good starting point for, or not even a good midpoint in this discussion, kind of taking a lot of the similar things that you just said. So Matt, let's watch this video right here.
All right, it's November 6th. The election is over, and the Republicans now dominate the government. Trump won, and Republicans have the Senate and the House. You've got everything you've asked for. Now I challenge you. Don't stop that passion that I've heard. If you've got a following and you've been shaming Christians to get out and vote for the last couple months, you better not shut your mouth about shaming Christians to get out and be a light in this world. I fully expect y'all that have been pushing and driving Christians to be involved politically to keep that same energy now that we have the House, the Senate, and the White House. That's all held down now. They got it. Now we can do our job, right? Because I've been told we got to get him in office. That'll help us with pushing forward the gospel. Mike, you got to vote for the one that helps us best to push forward the gospel, or else the Bible might become illegal. Trump won. You got the House. You got the Senate. It's all red. All conservative Christian values. The Bible is legal. Free speech won. You have no excuse now to fall back to where you were before this drive of passion came up during the election. If you weren't just using pandering and trying to appeal to emotions, if you truly believed that our entire freedom of faith and religion was on the line, and that Christianity was doomed if we lost, and that babies were going to be dying left and right if we lost, and that everything would fall apart on our Christian values if we lost, while we have everything, the office, the Senate, the House, you should be spending the next 4 years with that same passion about the gospel. And here's the irony. While Harris and Biden both proved to be hypocrites because they just sat here and campaigned on the fact that Trump is a threat to democracy and a fascist. If that was really true, you would not concede and you wouldn't give him the House. You would not concede power. But that was just language we use for the vote. So of course they're going to give it to him because they don't really believe he's a fascist. They don't really believe that he's that thing that they say he is with the mustache. Likewise, it works on the other way. You can't tell us that everything's on the line and then go back to your non-focused on Christ's life, double-minded life. So we'll see. Now I'm watching. God bless and go in peace.
Okay. There was a lot in there.
There was a lot in there.
I think I'm on his side.
Oh, yeah. No, that guy's, I like that guy. He's cool.
Yeah, the ridiculous thing is what he was saying Christians were saying.
Right.
Is what I was just talking about, right? Like with the frustration over we've just kind of idolized this and we've made this our sole purpose and passion.
Yep.
When he says, okay, now you got what you want. So I'm watching. What are you going to do?
Right.
And I would have said the exact same thing if we didn't get what we want, because the gospel needs to go forth from us regardless of who's president.
Right.
So that's an interesting, I mean, the world's watching.
Right.
The world is watching us as Christians and our response now, because the assumption is, from what I've seen online, that we as Christians, right, the blame is on Christians right now. We elected a racist, misogynist, sexist, adulterer, liar, cheater, criminal, fill in the blank of all these adjectives, which probably are true. We elected him because he was the savior, right?
Right.
And so we have this responsibility now to be salt and light. We have the responsibility now to love like Jesus. And I say now, and I would say that no matter who won, we have this responsibility because we're Christ followers, no matter who's president, right? When we see things that we disagree with online or in person from a family member, Thanksgiving's coming up. We all have family who disagrees with us politically, no matter what side you're on. If you're red, you have a blue family member. If you're blue, you have a red family member. If you're independent, you have a Unitarian member. If you're green, you have a whatever it is.
Unitarian?
Right?
I love it.
Yeah. Unity Party. Sorry.
Oh, I was thinking like the Unitarian Church.
No, the Unity
You
Party.
might have one of those too, though.
So the question is,
Yeah.
as a Christ follower, because my family knows, my friends on social media know, the people who I follow or don't follow me anymore, because I'm a Christian. And so they're like, well, I'm going to assume that, you took away all my rights, so I hate you now.
Right.
Because that's kind of a common theme on the internet today. Are we responding to them with hate? Are we responding them with attacks and mockery? Or are we responding with love? Are we speaking with grace-filled love and kindness?
Right.
I don't know if we are. And I see this, again, we mentioned this last week when we had our guest on, but like I have friends who voted Democrat who are Christ followers who've at least publicly proclaimed that they've placed their faith in Jesus.
Right.
Now, I don't know the heart. I don't know where they are today exactly. Right. I can't judge that. I just know what I've seen, and they voted blue. And what I've seen from some of them is hate for those who voted the other way.
Right.
I'm not seeing Christ in them.
No.
And I'm also not seeing Christ in some of the responses from the Republican side towards the Democrats who are frustrated, upset, getting angry over all this. We're responding back with frustration, anger, disrespect, hate. And so rather than being like Christ, rather than drawing people towards Christ, we're actually pushing them further away.
And I think, and I wonder, right? So you've seen like the immediate, like the anger and, all of these things. If you voted for Trump, you're, homophobic, sexist, bigot, you hate minorities and you hate immigrants and like all of this stuff comes out. And it's like, I don't see that. I wish I knew where you were coming from, but regardless of where these ideas come from, which, I guess they come from the media has painted, I think a lot of people have on both sides, you're colored by what you consume in the media. So if you got one side that's always saying Trump is a dictator, Trump is Hitler, Trump hates black people, Trump hates gay people, like that's all you ever see, you're going to say, okay, that must all be true. And then if you only ever see, here's how great Trump is, here's how bad Kamala is, all those other things, you're only seeing maybe some of everybody's only seeing the stuff that the people they already agree with are showing them. Right. And so we're all kind of digging deeper into our own kind of camps with it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm afraid of, to bring this all back around, because there is such a connection now of Christians supporting Trump, and for other people who are not Christ followers, they say, if you supported Trump, you're all these negative things. Therefore, they're going to potentially now write off Christianity, because Christianity has so entangled itself with a political side as opposed to just being, hey, follow Jesus first and foremost. And so my question then, Matt, is going forward, how can we as Christians overcome what's going to be already now an unnecessary obstacle, I think, to the gospel? Right? The gospel's already got enough obstacles, right? We tell people you have to pick up your cross. You have to die to yourself. This isn't about fulfilling your own desires at times. Your desires have to be, you're going to put your own desires aside to follow Jesus, right? So that's already the gospel. It's give up everything if you need to follow Jesus. That's a hard enough thing to ask for some people.
Yeah.
But now we've unfortunately in our country conflated it into these politics so much. Now people are going to hear, even though this isn't true, people are going to hear follow Trump to follow Jesus.
Right.
And so if the next time we go to share the gospel, we say, hey, I want to talk to you about Jesus. And they're going to say, whoa, does that, you're a Trump supporter? I don't want to hear anything about Jesus because you supported this, all these names that they call them. Whether that's not true or not is irrelevant, because their view is that Trump is all these things. And if you voted for him, you're all these things. And so they're going to reject Christianity before you can even actually get to what's Christian because of this political obstacle we placed there. How can we as Christians handle that moving forward over these next few years?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to pause, right? Because the immediate response I want to give if someone shuts me down right away because, oh, you're a Christian, so you're a Trump and I have to follow Trump before I follow Christ. Like I want to get defensive right away and be like, nah, dude, you're so wrong on this. Let me tell you how wrong you are.
Right.
We need to pause and say, well, tell me, like, why do you think that? Tell me about it. Right. We need to listen, I think, more. We need to give people who disagree with us the opportunity to share why.
Right.
And when I say listen, I actually mean listen, not just hear the words they're saying and be thinking about how I'm going to respond, but actually listen to understand where are you coming from? Like what happened? Why do you think this? Because here's the thing, whether as a Christian you voted for Trump or not, that doesn't matter. He is not the gospel.
Right.
Right. I know some Christians think that.
Yeah.
They don't represent every Christ follower and they don't represent Jesus.
Right.
Right. If you look at Jesus and how he interacted with the world around him, he was not unequal with the way that he loved others. He also was not unequal with the way that he called out sin and pointed people towards the kingdom of God.
Right.
So that's our responsibility. I don't want to point people towards the kingdom of Donald Trump because guess what? In 4 years, it's completely gone. He's done. He will never be president again in 4 years.
Right.
Like, unless he can change the constitution between now and then to allow him to be president forever, right? Like,
I did see some people on the more liberal side going into like meltdown conspiracy mode saying they were absolutely sure that he was going to have the Supreme Court rule that the 2 terms had to be consecutive to count and so that he'd get a third one. And I'm like, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And it's kind of silly to think that, but, right. So I want to point people towards the kingdom of God.
Right.
The way I do that is not by arguing politics, right? I can't place my faith in Jesus as savior until I know I need a savior.
Right.
Right. And so what I think is important, and right now we have a great opportunity because we have elected a very flawed, broken, publicly sinful person to office.
Yes.
Right. If you disagree with me, you're deceiving yourself.
Right.
He would even agree that he doesn't need a savior. Right. He has said that.
He has said that.
He has said that, well, when I do things that I think are wrong, I take care of it myself. I don't need to take that to God. Right. He has publicly said these types of things. And we've heard and seen comments that he's made that are not very loving. Kind of the opposite of loving, right? And so I think it's safe to say that everyone agrees he's not perfect.
Right. Which, I mean, and to your point, even some of the biggest, like, diehard Trump supporters I know have said, well, I'm not voting for a pastor, right? They know that he's not perfect.
So with that, we then have the opportunity to use that to say, man, this is why we need Jesus. Because we are all so broken, so flawed, so sinful, so far from God. And this is where our Bible reading comes in, because we started reading Romans this week. And the first couple chapters of Romans, you guys, are huge about how far from God we are.
Right.
Because of our sin.
Yep.
But because of his goodness and his love and his desire for relationship with the people that he created, he sent his son Jesus. And by having faith in Jesus, the righteousness of Jesus is now on us. So when God looks at us, he sees his son Jesus instead of sinful Matt, right? He sees his son Jesus instead of broken Nathan, right? And so this is why it matters so much, because this world stinks. It is broken. It is dark. It is flawed. It is ugly. It is filled with hate. Everyone can see that from both sides of the aisle. Yep. We can all see that, which just tells me we need something better. Because it's not like the last 4 years under a Democratic leadership, hate disappeared. Hate still existed.
Yep.
Right. And so it's not like one party abolishes hate. The love of Christ is the only thing that can abolish hate.
Yep.
And it requires me to give a complete surrender into that.
Right.
And so, so for that conversation, I think we have to listen, we have to love, we have to pull politics aside from the conversation about Christ. For the gospel to go forward, we can't be focused on politics. We have to be focused on the kingdom of God.
Politics.
Because
of Romans, which, as a quick aside, if you missed that, Matt brought up our Bible reading plan, and you can be a part of that too. If you have not done so already, there's a link in this podcast description or on the YouTube page. We are reading the Bible in a year, and we would love for you to read along with us. You don't have to try to catch up. We're getting pretty late in the year. You can just jump in where we are, read along, comment in that app. It's in the Bible app. And you know what? We are getting ready to, wrap up the year, and we'll be starting a new one again in January. So new year, new Bible reading, and we would love for you all to join us in all of those endeavors. But even if you're not a part of that plan, we hope you are taking some time out of your day, reading the Bible, reading God's word, and then putting it into practice, taking it out into the world. I've been doing some Bible reading for another group I'm a part of, and it's kind of, you can read wherever. In this group, we're all reading this, but I picked and started reading Ezekiel. And a lot of what I see in Ezekiel, to kind of bring it also into this discussion, is God telling his people the importance of turning away from idols, and God talking so much about how destructive it is to follow idols, and how he actually has pretty strong judgment for his people when they turn to idols. And so to kind of bring it back to what you're saying, it's like, Christians, we need to be really, really careful in this, because it's so easy to make politics the idol. And like you said, this is what we've been excited about and what we talk about and what we keep bringing up. And we want to, do we talk as much about Jesus as we do Donald Trump?
Right.
And I know people in my life who I hear them talk and get more excited about Jesus than Donald Trump. And it's not even just politics, like idolatry.
You may get more excited about Trump than Jesus.
That's what I meant to say. Yes, sorry.
I would celebrate with you if you said you knew someone who's more excited about Jesus.
But
let's go.
Yeah, we should talk more about
100%.
Jesus. But I hear, and it's like, I know, and this is something that everybody needs to. I need to look at myself. I need to say, what is getting me excited? And if it's not Jesus, what do I need to adjust? And how do I need to get my priorities back where they need to go? Because all of us will slip into that. I'm just as easily able to start talking about, you'll hear me talking about AI or something in technology. And I've had people say, hey, do you care as much about Jesus as you do about that? And I have to think, you know what? I really need to examine that and sort some stuff out. So all of us are in this process of making sure we're orienting our lives towards God, and all of us need to take a minute and repent if something else has taken that place. And so maybe even the first step is as a Christian, before I say, how am I going to get past the question I asked? How am I going to get past this obstacle that's put up there? First of all, maybe think internally, be a little introspective and say, have I been guilty of putting that obstacle there? And what do I need to do to fix that?
Yeah. That's good.
And then I think so when we see, the reaction, I've seen so many people, friends and family on Facebook, who have basically said, if you voted for Trump, you voted against me and you voted against my rights, and you are not my friend, and I don't want to, have anything to do with you. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be seeing some of you this around Christmas and things like that. And this could be very uncomfortable. Yeah. And it's like, when I see those people, I want to, and maybe I don't know if Facebook's the right venue for this, but I would love, and maybe I'll get these opportunities to maybe encourage that introspection on both sides, right? If your view is people voted for Trump, therefore the majority, because he won the popular vote as well, right? So if your thought is genuinely, the majority of people who voted in our country are racist, bigoted people, in spite of the fact that Trump had massive increases in Latino voters, in black voters. He got the largest Jewish population vote of any Republican ever. And if your view is, well, the whole other side, they're just racist, they're just terrible people. It's like, that doesn't add up to the data. It's really dismissive. And so if your thought was, because Trump won, our country, all these people are terrible, maybe this is the time to be introspective as well, to say, why did they vote for him? Why was it? Is everything I've thought or heard about Trump accurate? Yeah. Is he actually promoting all of these things? Yeah. And and there's things that have it really frustrated me. I saw somebody specifically said, so you voted for Trump because you want lower gas prices. Lower gas prices were more important to you than my rights and my life.
Right.
And I thought, first of all, lower gas prices equals lower food prices, lower things. And it's like, I'm trying to provide for my family.
Right.
And there are people who are struggling to buy groceries for their kids and feed their families. And what you are basically, if you're saying that that's not a worthwhile thing to pursue, then you are in a privileged enough position where you can afford the higher prices. Right. And so to sit there and say, well, this doesn't affect me, I can afford the higher prices. So you, person A, struggling to feed your family, are terrible because you made that decision. It's like, no, you are speaking from a place of crazy privilege if the massive amount of inflation hasn't hurt you.
Yeah. There's a lot of thoughts and feelings and responses I have towards a lot of the stuff I've seen over the last, 36 hours or so online. Some of it being, I saw one post of, I hope that you enjoy your lower gas prices when your daughter gets sepsis from a miscarriage and dies.
Right.
And it's like, that has nothing to do with this election. Like none of the candidates were going to say, well, if you're having a miscarriage and you get sepsis, I'm going to deny all healthcare. In fact, one of the biggest arguments and hate towards people who voted for Trump is coming from two camps. The first camp is the pro-choice camp, saying, well, you hate women's rights, you hate healthcare and my privilege and responsibility. And that's why, or not my privilege and responsibility, my opportunity for being alive and getting the care that I need and choosing for myself and all the things, right? All the arguments against it. Guess who doesn't have control over whether or not you can get an abortion?
The president.
The president. It's up to the states.
Right.
No matter who is the president, your abortion rights did not change based upon the president, aren't going to change based on the president, because Donald Trump has publicly said multiple times that he's not going to pass a law from the federal side about abortion. That is a state responsibility.
And even if he tried to, the Supreme Court has ruled that it is a state responsibility.
Right. So why would Democrats who are so fed up over this, why is that the one argument that they're standing on?
I mean, I literally watched an ad that showed a woman having a miscarriage, and the guy calls the doctor, and the doctor says, you need to come in right away. And then this guy steps in and says, no, I'm a Republican. You can't do that. And the whole ad was, Republicans are gonna, if you need medical care for an ectopic pregnancy, or a miscarriage, a doctor won't. And that has been such a fear mongering tactic, because every single state actually does not consider a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy to be abortion. There's not a law. And now there's some people, maybe you can find an example where this has been otherwise. Every article I've seen, and I've seen people post things, well, this person died because they didn't get medical care after a miscarriage. Every single one I've seen that has not been the actual case. For instance, there's a woman in, I want to say Nevada, that this headline was going around recently that she died, or no, she's facing criminal charges for having a miscarriage is what it is. But you dig into the story, and this was from 2018, before Roe v. Wade was overturned. And she was a drug user who tried to force an abortion using medical stuff that she could have legally gotten in Nevada, but she did it outside of that anyway. The baby was born alive and she let it die. That's why she's in trouble.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about, having a miscarriage and having a doctor feel like they have to prosecute you. And every other case I've seen where people are trying to make the argument that legitimate healthcare needs, like a miscarriage, which is a tragedy, or an ectopic pregnancy, which is a tragedy, will be banned now. I have not yet found an instance where that is actually what was going on once you get past the sensational headline. Now, again, if you're watching this and there you have an example, send it in, podcast@dfchurch.com. I'd love to be able to say that, because I don't think there is a conservative Republican person who says that those things should be like treated as murder, or as, when there's an accident that occurs in nature. Right.
Yep. There's a post I saw from someone I know and am close with online. Not me hoping every female that voted against herself ends up needing medical care that he's vowed to outlaw. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. What did Trump vow to outlaw?
Right.
As far as medical care specifically for women, what did he vow to outlaw? Because I haven't seen it. I
haven't seen it either. And in fact, I looked, it's called Agenda 47.
Okay.
And it's his policy page.
Yeah.
And I could not find anything in there about that. Now, a lot of people have gone and said, well, there's this Project 2025 thing.
Right.
And it's like, but that's not his.
Oh, have you heard the fake news going around right now?
No.
A lot of people are posting that Trump announced that he actually was behind Project 2025 the whole time.
What? That's so funny.
He didn't make that announcement, but people are sharing that all over all the internets, and it's hilarious.
Shocking.
So there's that camp, right? The abortion side of it, where I'm seeing a lot of hate and argument from those who are pro-choice, saying that now that Trump has been elected, their rights to that have all been taken away, when Trump's election took away none of those rights. In fact, I think 10 states had abortion issues on their ballots this time around. And 8 of those 10 passed in favor for the abortion side.
Right. I think Florida's
one that
didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, go
Florida. There was another smaller, very, very red state that did not do it. But yeah, it's super interesting that that's one of the big arguments. The second big argument is the LGBTQ plus side, right?
Yeah.
So now there's that homophobic rhetoric that is, their lives are literally at stake because of this.
Yeah.
But, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Donald Trump has been one of the few presidents when he was president who actually tried to put policy into place and appointed people who are in the LGBTQ plus community, right? He appointed a couple different judges who are gay. He also vowed to do this. Let me find the information. A global. Okay, first of all, he's done massive amounts of philanthropic work combating the AIDS crisis. He supported the amending of the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include a ban on discrimination based upon sexual orientation.
He appointed the first openly gay cabinet member. This is before any Democrat did that. And so, honestly, the question I almost was thinking, he actually also worked really hard in his first term at ending some of the LGBT discrimination in other countries where you can get killed.
So that's what I was going to say. He launched a global campaign to end the criminalization of homosexuality in 2019, which, if you don't know, 72 countries have some sort of ban on it, and like 8 or 9 of them, it's actually punishable by death.
Right.
And so Trump's goal was to end that globally. So if you're in that camp saying all my rights now as a gay person are being taken away,
right?
No, the only thing I've seen and heard from Trump and from the Republican side, outside of a few individuals, right, is the trans argument as it relates to sports.
Right.
That's
children.
And children, right? So we're not going to do surgeries on children.
Right. Or chemical castration.
Right. And we also want biological males to play male sports and biological females to play female sports. And here's what's really, really, really interesting. People who are on the other side of that saying, well, no, if you identify as a female, you're a female, are okay with it until that person's competing against their daughter.
Right.
I have seen tunes changed on people's social media and interactions with them, it was all fine and dandy until it affected their kids directly. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I was wrong with that. Well,
Right.
yeah. And
Right.
so these two, what I see is the two biggest sides of hate. Now there's also, the misogynistic, the racism, things like that. Right. Which I understand, but I haven't seen any policy for or against any of those things. So that's just a personal problem. And there's things with Harris that I'm sure people on both sides of the aisle didn't like about her as a person anyway. So if you look at policy, the two biggest arguments I'm seeing of why the Democrats are so angry, sad, concerned, whatever it might be,
Right.
I haven't seen the reality of, at least in the 4 years Trump was president.
Yeah. When I look at the question I get is it's kind of backwards, because I think not, why all you LGBT people are so upset. I'm more surprised that Christians support him as much as he do, considering how pro LGBT he actually is,
Right.
which shows me that that's an issue that at least the Republican Party overall has moved on from. Like he had them pull out a lot of language that was anti quote LGBT in the official party platform. So looking at, yeah, I mean, we don't need to go through every single thing, but like I pulled up like his actual agenda, and there's like 20 main points of what he wants to try to do. And so real quick, I'm going to just go through. Here's the 20 points that he said. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. End inflation and make America affordable again. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Prevent World War III. Restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. End the weaponization of government against the American people. Stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish the foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence, and lock up violent offenders. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Strengthen and modernize our military, making it, without question, the strongest and most powerful in the world. Keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes for the retirement age. Cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut costly and burdensome regulations. Cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. Keep men out of women's sports. Deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our colleges, campuses safe and patriotic again. Secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship, and unite our country by bringing it to a new and record levels of success.
Okay.
So the women's rights issue thing, abortion is not on there at all.
No, because he can't. He has said many times he's not doing anything about it.
On both sides, Republicans and Democrats, if that was what you were voting for, that was not on the table this election.
Exactly. Okay. So let me first of all just warn people not to get their hopes up. That is a lot. It will not happen in 4 years.
No.
All the red tape that our government has, that stuff will not happen in 4 years. Can we start to make progress towards some of those things? Sure. Absolutely. That's great. Number two is probably the only one that
the mass deportation.
I would sit and have conversations with. Mm-hmm. Now, I know right away people are going to be like, oh, so Matt's pro all the illegal immigrants in here. No, that's not the case. I'm saying a mass deportation of all of them is going to cause a lot of harm to our economy and to a lot of families. Because usually the mass deportation, what's happening is the parents are getting deported and the kids are staying behind because they were born here, so they're citizens.
Right.
And so there's some big issues there. That's a very tough situation that I think longer conversations need to have happen. I would much rather see, I'm all for, and again, it doesn't matter. No matter what I say, I'll make someone mad, so I'm here for it.
Let's do it.
I'm all for more secure borders.
Yep.
But I'm also all for making the process clean,
100%.
simple, and easy for people to be here legally.
Right.
I love travel. I don't get to visit a lot of other countries, but the times I have gone, I like it to be clean and easy and simple for me to go there and visit there and be a part of that, or maybe even move there potentially.
Move there and become a citizen.
But I'm also only going to go visit those countries the way that the country says I have to go through this process. And so like I am for legal immigration to a great extent. Let's make that. This is a beautiful, this has the potential to be a beautiful country for a lot of people to come to.
Right.
So let's figure out how we can make that happen in a way that makes sense.
Right. So I think you're right. And I think that's why his first thing is seal the border. I think that's your number one priority is like, we have so many people coming illegally and we don't know who they are. We don't know. I know people, this is one of the reasons that he's been called racist is because we know that there is a lot more than drug and cartel activity because we just don't know who's coming in. Yeah. So I don't think that should be controversial. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with the reality of what happens when you have completely open.
Well, yeah, he's not
borders.
racist against Black, Asian, Latino Americans.
Right.
Right. That's not the issue here. The issue is he wants to make sure that those who are in America are here legally.
Right. So you fix the border and then you start, if you need to say, look, you are here illegally and you don't have any family or you're a criminal or you're pick, whatever, maybe that's where the deportations start. But, and to kind of echo what you said, and maybe this will be the controversial thing I say, I know that in the past there's been like talking like this concept of, a path to citizenship or something like that. And it's like, I'm not inherently 100%. Yes, you came here illegally, and so why should you get any type of path to citizenship will be the response. And that's fair, especially because the people who did go through the process, now it's like, well, why did I even go through the process if you're going to just reward the people who didn't? Which is why actually Trump won a lot of immigrant votes because those people generally don't like illegal immigration.
Right.
But if it's almost like, okay, we messed up. We let way too many people in here illegally. We've got to figure out something to do. Right. Right. And so whatever that looks like, maybe that is where the compromise and the discussion and the conversations happen, where we say, let's find a way to do something because we realistically, like you said, we cannot just deport every single illegal person who's here. Mm-hmm. You're going to just break up families, which I don't think, unless you're trying to send the kids back who are now legal citizens because they were born here. It's like, what do you do? Yeah. Right. So that's a tough conversation.
Yep. I mean, the Bible talks a lot about welcoming the foreigner, right? Mm-hmm. And being a safe haven and being a place where we're not mistreating them. Leviticus 19, don't mistreat any foreigners who live in your land. Instead, treat them as well as you treat citizens. Love them as much as you love them yourself. Exodus, do not oppress a foreigner. You know how it feels to be a foreigner because you were foreigners in Egypt, right? So like, it's a reminder of, look, you've been in this situation, so you should treat others the same. Matthew 25, Jesus says, I was a stranger and you invited me in. Mm-hmm. Truly, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Mm-hmm. And so like, what if as Christians, we started looking at other people as the way I treat that person is the way I'm treating Jesus.
Right.
Or at least the way, at a minimum, the way I'm representing Jesus as a Christ follower. And so we have to be super careful with that. Now, I do think you're right. We need to figure out the process for it. And yeah, some people are going to have it not be as fair because they went through the process originally and it was more difficult and they did it. Good. You did it. Like, welcome. I mean,
it's a tough situation because we have to maybe say there's what we wish would happen, but that didn't. So let's do what we can with what we have.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the parable of the workers in the vineyard, right? Where some worked all day and got paid the same amount as those who just worked the last hour of the day.
Right.
And they complained and they said it's not fair. It's like, well, you agreed to that. You got paid. Right. Awesome. Right. So like with those who went through the process, you did it. Awesome. That's what you agreed to. Now we've figured out a way to be even more welcoming to people and honestly grow our economy through that. Because if I'm a legal citizen with like the proper work permits and everything, guess what happens with the government? getting a few more tax dollars, which helps boost all the other things that Trump wants to do, right? Like there's pros and cons on all ends. And so we just have to be super careful. I think the assumption is mass deportation. That immediately means absolutely everyone who might look, sound, talk different than me, they're just going to get ejected, no questions asked. Well, no, that's not what Trump is going to do. At least I hope that's not what he's going to do. And if it is, I'm going to be on your side fighting against him. Right?
Yeah,
Those of you
and
who disagree with that.
and he, each one of these goes into much more detail in this document. So what he says is, he's going to secure the border, enforce immigration laws, and 3, begin the largest deportation. What he says, the President Trump and Republicans will reverse the Democrats' destructive open borders policies that have allowed criminal gangs and illegal aliens from around the world to roam the United States without consequence. The Republican Party is committed to sending illegal aliens back home and removing those who have violated our laws. But it doesn't say really more other than, and then strict vetting, stopping sanctuary cities, ensure our legal immigration system puts American workers first. And that's the other thing. If you are really pro immigrants, legal or illegal, if you're really pro these people who are coming here trying to seek out a better life, I think you would want them here legally as opposed to illegally. For what you just said, if you are here illegally, you are getting paid under the table. You're getting paid well below minimum wage, and you're getting, I guess you are getting that. You're getting a lot of other benefits because there's a lot of housing and other things provided to you now.
Right.
But if you really care about these people, they're getting taken advantage of because they're here illegally. They don't have the same protections that a legal citizen does. So I think if you genuinely care, you would want them to come the right way as well.
Right.
Because then they are getting paid minimum wage and they are a part of our system and a part of our country.
Yep. Yeah. And I want to be very careful here. We're not sitting here on this podcast trying to defend Trump and say why he's so great. I think we would both agree that Donald Trump himself is, like we already mentioned, a sinner. As far as like a person goes, I would not endorse him as a role model for anyone.
Right.
I think what we're saying is, look, he was elected. He's our president. This world is full of hate for a lot of reasons that aren't necessarily true or right or worth it. Right? Like, man, what hate does to your health, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically is detrimental. There have been studies done when you are harboring bitterness and unforgiveness and hate, what it does to all your areas of health.
Right.
Like, life's too short for us to spend that much time hating.
Yeah.
Right. I'm reminded of Psalm 146, where it talks about, don't put your trust in princes, a son of man in whom there's no salvation.
Right.
For there's only hope in the God of Jacob. Right. And so whether you were Harris or Trump, stop putting your hope in that person. There is no salvation in them. Churchgoers, America's not going to experience revival just because Trump was elected.
Right.
The only way we're going to experience revival is if you go forth and you start to disciple people, you start to share the gospel more than you share your politics.
Right.
Right. Like, there's this just bitter division in our country. And I think a lot of people just assume that, as soon as Donald's elected, it's all going to get better. No, it's not. There's still work to do as Christians.
Right.
Right. What, Second Chronicles, I looked this one up, 7:14, because I forgot what verse it was. I don't have the Old Testament memorized. I'm sorry. Second Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. Humble yourself.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. We are all so full of pride, and I am right and you are wrong.
Yep.
And I'm going to fight you until you give in, or one or both of us die, right? Like, that tends to be the American way right now.
Right.
And God says, humble yourselves, turn from your wicked ways. And he's not saying only if you're on the left or only if you're on the right.
Right.
He's saying if you are claiming Christ, if you're a Christian, if you're one of his people, turn from your wicked ways. If you want to see something great happen in this country, it is not from the politics of Donald Trump. It is from the advancement of the gospel of the kingdom of God and of Christ and what he has done for us and putting our focus on him and him alone.
That is right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up this topic. Let's stop focusing on politics. Let's move forward. Let's tell people about Jesus. Now, we do want to go briefly to our listener mail. Again, remember, you can email us podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com.
Yeah, be a part of this conversation. We love hearing
I'd
from you
love
guys.
to hear what you think about all this. Please stop what you're doing. Write us a letter. Write us an email. Not a letter. I mean, I guess you could write us a letter.
You can send it to 6630 Brittany Drive, Fort Collins, Colorado, 80525, care of the Faith Life Podcast.
Wow, that would be kind of a fun. But send us an email, podcast@dfchurch.com, just like our friend Jeremiah did. This study suggests that Jesus' miraculous catch of fish may have been less than, and then it cuts off, less than miraculous.
Yeah.
So he links to an article that basically, in summary, said the fish, the natural conditions that exist in the, was it the Sea of Galilee? I think so. Lead to these instances where all the fish are driven up to the shallow end and to the surface for people to easily just scoop up massive amounts of fish. And that maybe that the miracle of Jesus was just a coincidence that during one of these times in which all these fish were up, they happened to put their nets down. It just worked out well that this was a time and it was miraculous. So he says, how should Christians respond to natural explanations of miracles, especially given last week's podcast demanding acceptability of miracles?
Interesting.
So I had a couple thoughts on this. The first one I thought was, if it really was that normative and not that strange for all these fish to happen, then like this article says, people would be able to just go up all the time and just grab fish really easily and it wouldn't be a big thing.
Right.
Why would the authors have considered it a miracle if it was something that just normally happened? Right? Because they talk about it being a miracle.
Right.
That means to me it was outside their norm, because we have to remember they're not writing to us 2,000 years removed who don't know what's happening.
Right.
They're writing this with people who live in the area, know what's normal, know the things that have happened. And so that would be a weird thing for me to write something that says, hey, this crazy thing happened, when everybody reading it would be like, what? That always happens. What are you talking about? So I think that there's got to be probably more going on than just what happened with this natural event.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about people who like their career, their livelihood was fishing.
Right.
They probably knew the currents of that water and the norms of it and what to expect and when to expect it better than anyone else.
Exactly.
And so to be out there for so long and coming up empty for so long and not look on the other side of the boat. And it's not like this is a giant Carnival cruise line, right? Where they're taking 20 minutes to walk to the other side of this boat. It's a couple second walk, right? Or I could just look and see. And so I would think that they would be smart enough to do that.
Right.
And either way, it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the fact that Jesus stepped onto the boat and Jesus said, hey, do this. Right? It doesn't change the fact that Jesus was the one that directed them towards that. How often do we say that, let's say I was almost in a major accident, right? And like the vehicle that was about to T-bone me missed me by inches. And I say it's a miracle I wasn't killed.
Well, they said that about Trump. Bringing it back to that, when the assassination happened, it was so close. Was it
so close? Was it a miracle?
Protection from God?
What we need to know is that God is not bound by the laws of nature that he created, right? He can still perform and act outside of that. We're bound by it, right? But God still acts. God still does, right? Or I was, let's say I was short on rent this month and I didn't really tell anyone about it, but all of a sudden there was an envelope with some cash underneath my mat. And I say, man, it was a miracle that God provided for me and my family that month.
Yeah.
Right. The natural explanation is, well, no, someone heard about it, or didn't hear about it and just thought, I'm going to give this person $1,000 cash this month.
Right.
Put an envelope. Yeah, the natural explanation is there, but that doesn't negate that God ordained it to happen.
Right.
Right. It's the same thing with the parting of the Red Sea. We've tried to explain it naturally and say, well, the way the winds come and the way this happens, or the sun standing still or whatever. Right. We have all these natural explanations for things of why everything was just exactly perfect for that event to happen in that exact moment. Right. You know what that tells me? God.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
It's the same thing with our earth. Everything had to be exactly perfect.
Right.
Naturally speaking, the odds are so out there for it to have happened exactly like this, for us to sustain life the way we have on this planet.
Right.
But that's the natural explanation. And you know what the non-natural explanation is? God's the one that made it exactly perfect for it to happen in that moment. And so that's the beauty of faith is I look at stuff like that and I'm like, wow, yay, God, you did this. You created nature in such a way that it, the miracle of life, as we call birth, right? The miracle of life. Even non-Christians call it a miracle because it's so strange how perfect everything had to happen in order for us to be able to conceive the way we do and give birth the way we do and sustain life the way we do. We call it the miracle of life. And I call it God.
I love that.
Right? Like he created that. And so that's a really good question, Jeremiah. And I think important for us to enjoy science as a gift from God, showing how cool he is.
Right. And if you really, we've had episodes in the past about how we interact with science in the Bible. So if you want a deeper dive into that topic, just check out our back catalog because we've talked about it. We'll probably talk about it again at some point, but it is great. Now, the other email, we had gotten some questions about, and I don't think, Matt, I had gotten this original email, but we'd gotten a question about our episode a couple weeks back. Again, I know I said we were done talking about politics, but with response to this email, we'd gotten a question because we had titled that episode, Should a Christian Vote for Kamala? Now, we can, if you know us and if you listen to the episode, that title was meant to catch your attention. But this person had said, well, are you going to have an episode, Should a Christian Vote for Trump? And I think we covered that question pretty thoroughly in the episode. And so we're not going to have an episode called Should a Christian Vote for Trump? Because really we could have called the episode of that and the episode content would have been the exact same. The title was more of an attention.
And I followed up with this person. I let him know that and was like, if you watch it and you watch it assuming the title of Trump instead of Harris, the conclusions are still the same. It was more attention getting. So he then also responded and said, that was a little bit misleading. And I was like, I know, clickbait. Here we are, the Faith Life podcast.
Well, yeah. I mean, is it clickbait or is it because that is a legitimate thing that was talked about in that episode?
That's true. One interesting thing that he brought up in later correspondence as we've gone back and forth is we had talked about on that episode when I was reading this list of like things that Christians should consider.
Was that from Gospel Coalition or Focus on the Family? Or neither?
I don't remember where it was from. Maybe we'll find it and relink it or something. Anyway, it was one of the things is racial equality, right? Every nation, tribe, and tongue is created by him and will worship him. And so this idea of viewing all as equal, there's neither Jew nor Gentile, male nor female, slave nor and he said he found that part interesting because one candidate has with great vigor speaking disrespectfully towards Yahweh's creation. I assume he's talking about towards other people created by God, right? Not like speaking negatively towards mountains and the ocean.
I think you're right.
Speaking negatively towards people. And so he says, I've always found little respect for any individual who passes judgment on how God made man. Right. So that's an interesting thing to think about of like, when I am tearing down another person, I'm tearing down God's creation. I'm tearing down Imago Dei, right? Like the image of God. I'm tearing that down and mocking that and ridiculing that. And so, oh man, you got to check yourself. I have to check myself in that situation, right? Because that person is created by God for a purpose.
Right.
And I'm going to just mock and ridicule and tear down and hate with vigor towards them.
Right.
It's a warning.
As a clarification, it was from Moody Church, Dr. Erwin Lutzer.
Oh, that's right. It was Lutzer. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time we have today. Hopefully you can take some of this. You can go out into your community. You can find a way to represent Jesus, not represent a political party, not represent a political candidate, not represent your personal ideological motivations, but really represent Jesus. Go out into our communities, find a way to be unifying, to be kind, caring, compassionate towards those you disagree with. That's what God calls us to do. Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. You're not praying that they get hit by a bus. You're praying for their well-being. You're loving them and looking to serve them. So find a way, get out and do that in your community this week, and we will see you next week.
Bye.